Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, I normally don't do this too often when I talk about a series. I usually like to have the movies or the reviews as like individual videos just because it makes it easier. But I watched all three of these in one day. I've actually watched 5 movies today. I'm not even kidding. Trolls movies, the Jonas Brothers Christmas movie, and then some British movie that came out I was disappointed about called The Roses. Don't know if I'm going to do reviews on all of those, honestly. But yeah, I watched all 3 of these in one day, pretty much within like a couple of hours of each other. So I thought it might just be easier to talk about it in one video, especially because I have like a lot of notes on the first 2 movies, but I think especially the first one. But the third one I didn't really care for as much, and I don't have as many notes on. I actually kind of ended up skipping through a lot of the parts of that movie anyway, so I thought it's probably enough to just like put it all together in one video. It just makes it easier, but I'll have like timestamps or something if I remember on like where each movie starts. So I kind of avoided this series for a while. Let me just start with that first. I avoided this series for a while. DreamWorks movies I feel like usually are pretty good, but can be kind of a hit or miss. Like this surprisingly turned out to be good, but I'm not gonna give that like chance to like The Boss Baby or anything. I'm not gonna watch like every DreamWorks movie, but this one I'm getting rid of Peacock, and it's kind of annoying when a series is split up into like multiple streaming services where the first 2 Trolls movies are on Peacock, but then the third is on Amazon Prime for some reason, to the point where I didn't even know where the third one was. I had to like Google it of like what service is it on. I was almost not even gonna watch it. But yeah, I wasn't originally gonna like ever watch these movies or whatever, but I saw them on there and I thought if I'm getting rid of Peacock in like less than a month anyway, I might as well check them out. I was at least a bit curious. Like the only things I knew about the movies is that they're like musicals. There's that meme that the character Branch says about singing killed my grandma, which is like kind of funnier, like a bit in context of how just kind of out of nowhere it pops up from, and because it's built up as like this big thing, and then the villains of the third movie, who I think are called like Velvet and Veneer or whatever, were in like a ton of like memes on YouTube or something, and I didn't really get the hype, and now I kind of do, but it's really only like one specific line of theirs I thought was kind of funny that I think people were like quoting a lot. I don't really remember there being like any memes about the second movie, which is fine because like the second movie was my favorite out of all of them, because I think for me it's like World Tour, original Trolls, and then Trolls Band Together. I feel like Trolls Band Together was just kind of like whatever, you'll hear me talk about it. But no, the singing's actually pretty. Hold on, let me scroll back to the bottom of my notes of why I ended up liking these. I thought the singing was going to be cringe, but like even though they have celebrities voicing the main characters, like the main character, her name's Poppy, she's voiced by Anna Kendrick, who I already knew could sing anyway because of the Pitch Perfect movies. And Justin Timberlake voices Branch, and of course we all know he can sing, even though they don't let him sing for most of the movie, which has to do with like the character though. But don't worry, he gets to sing a bunch in the sequels, which is cool. Actually, he gets to sing more as like the series continues, which is kind of cool. The third movie is basically about him anyway, even though it just has a picture of like Poppy's sister for some reason. But yeah, they got people who could actually sing. The singing is not cringe. There's actually only a couple of original songs, and I'm just talking about these movies in general. It's mostly covers, but the covers are pretty good. Heck, they get pretty much like anybody who can like actually sing for like voicing the characters too. So that was good. Otherwise it like could have come off as like bad. But I like the main characters and their dynamic and how their relationship kind of grows throughout these 3 movies and stuff. But I'm gonna start talking about the first movie. Oh, by the way, because I'm just reading off my notes, and obviously I'm only writing of like whichever movie I'm at that point. I might get some things wrong or change, or I might have to clarify of like, hey, this ended up being answered in the sequel, or my opinion on this changed, or whatever. So I'll try to remember that, but I'll just go off my notes as like how I wrote them while I watched. Okay, starting off with the first movie, my opinion on Poppy kind of changed throughout the watching the series and stuff, but for the most part she's like a pretty fun main character. I liked her friendship with Branch. It kind of reminds me, what's that ship dynamic, like Grumpy and Sunshine or whatever, though they do stay as friends for like the first yeah, the first movie is like them becoming friends and they ended as like best friends, and the second movie I think it's like where they're like dating, and then by the third movie I think Branch wants to get married to Poppy or something. But they I love that with these two characters they still have their like besties dynamic, whether they're like dating or not. Like how they interact with each other doesn't really change or anything. I always think that's fun to watch with like, I guess, like fictional relationships, real people relationships. I haven't really been in, you know, relationships or whatever, but that's always kind of nice when I'd see that with my friends and their partners or whatever, of how, or in like fiction where it's like you're dating but you still act like you're best friends and stuff. Like it like doesn't make it weird or anything. Let's see, but Poppy and Branch, they're fun to watch, where like Poppy is like this like peppy ray of sunshine, and she's like very cheerful, but not in an annoying way, where I feel like a lot of like really peppy fictional characters that are like always happy all the time, or they can come off as either annoying or they're not very like aware of how the world works or whatever. And like Poppy is like, she knows how to get things done and when to be serious, and she even says in the first movie like she knows the world isn't all sunshine, but she'd rather be like cheerful anyway. And she also bugs the shit out of Branch constantly, especially in the first movie, of kind of like putting him in his place more so than like SpongeBob annoying Squidward just to be annoying or whatever. Like Branch is a character that is like this paranoid, grumpy survivalist who lives in a bunker, and Poppy, to get him to go on the adventure, hides all her friends in his bunker as like a way to keep them safe, but also like to force him to come, where he's like, oh gosh, get me out of here, I don't want to be around all these sing-songy people or whatever. Oh yeah, I should probably give some background on these movies if you've never seen them. So there's a bunch of trolls. They're based on like the little troll dolls and stuff. They even make like a joke about it in the movie. But instead of being like made out of wood and having the crazy hair, they're like these little colorful creatures that kind of remind me of like Smurfs or something. But they do all have the troll hair. Like their hair has the ability to like grow, where they can use it kind of like Rapunzel uses her hair in the Disney movie. But they're all like super colorful and fun, except for, and they have this thing where they're eaten by these creatures. It's like this backstory thing where it's like 20 years ago there's these creatures called the Bergens who are a lot bigger and don't look like trolls. They kind of look more like orcs or goblins or whatever. I know those are different things, but I'm just saying. And the Bergens are these creatures that aren't allowed to be like happy or something unless they eat a troll, but that's like kind of not true. It's just more of like a propaganda thing. So they have this troll tree where they eat trolls every year, and then all the trolls run away, and then they end up living in like their own village, but the Bergens are like still trying to find them or whatever. And it's like a thing they talk about in the other movies as well, about the trolls being afraid of the Bergens, and eventually they end up all becoming friends and whatever. And there's these two Bergen characters you'll hear me talk about in this one that end up becoming like more important characters, or I guess more like lovable side characters, I guess, in the other movies. But yeah, that's just like kind of the background stuff. Anyway, back to Poppy and Branch. I like that they can both be like very snarky, and Poppy is like super upbeat, at least in this movie anyway, until she interacts with Branch, and then she's a lot more funny and realistic, where she'll get like sick of his attitude and stuff. But yeah, Anna Kendrick, I think out of everybody in the movies, and especially this one, seems to have the most songs, but she like sings her heart out for this animated movie about trolls, you know. I was kind of mad in the first movie where I thought it feels kind of evil. They have Justin Timberlake in a musical movie, but as a character that refuses to sing. Like all the other troll characters sing except for Branch, and then it turns out the reason he's gray is like when the trolls don't sing and aren't happy, they literally like lose all their color and turn like completely gray. So he's actually like not supposed to look like that. And there's like a reason he doesn't sing, which is where the singing killed my grandma meme came from. which I'll talk about when we get there. But yeah, a lot of the songs are covers. I think in terms of music for the series as a whole, I know I'm giving some general stuff, but you know, as it pops up in the first movie, I feel like I have to like compare it to the other ones a bit. I liked the music in the second movie the most, and then the first movie, and then the third movie, it's kind of just eh. But the first movie, a lot of the songs were like songs I noticed were in like Just Dance, which was kind of cool. Like literally the first song in this movie, and it's a thing they do in the second one too, where they have a mashup of like these different like super cheerful, happy songs that the trolls all sing or whatever. Okay, sorry for the abrupt interruption. I had to go walk my dog. I'm also going to try and talk like a bit quieter. I know sometimes I get overly excited just because I remembered my mom is sleeping a couple rooms down trying to take a nap. I don't want to wake her. Anyway, where I think I left off was how a lot of the songs are covers, but the music in the first movie is pretty cool, or at least a couple of songs I recognized from like Just Dance. But yeah, hearing Move Your Feet by, I think the group's called Junior or something, was cool. Never actually heard Gorillaz in a kids movie. I think it was the song Clint Eastwood, but I don't remember. But yeah, I was surprised there were so many old songs. Like there was Donna Summer's I Feel Love, which has like a killer instrumental section and stuff, where it takes place during one of the action scenes. There was a bit of the song Summer Place. There was that song, what's the one that goes like, hello, is it me you're looking for? Yeah, but there's like a lot of older music than I expected. There's all actually like pop songs in this movie, but there's like a plot reason for that gets answered in the second movie. I was surprised at the amount of like realistic and kind of dark humor in this movie, which was kind of fun. I mean, I know that's like a DreamWorks thing, or not just DreamWorks, but like you tend to notice it more in like DreamWorks movies and stuff. It's kind of funny because this one had like a bit more like darker humor, but then by the time you get to the third movie, it kind of shifts over to more like adult jokes, which was kind of interesting. I think mostly because this one is like the whole thing of like the trolls are going to be eaten, so it's kind of easier to go into that and how they're these like tiny creatures in an environment where like everyone's sort of bigger than them. I absolutely love the look of the world of the trolls. That felt like kind of a bit wordy, because like instead of being made out of wood like the little troll dolls, they're kind of like Smurfs or something, but they're sort of fuzzy and they have like their hair looks like troll doll hair, but their environment looks like it's straight out of Yoshi's Woolly World, where the ocean will be like made out of sequins, or things will be made out of wool or fake flowers or felt and stuff. It just looks very soft and fuzzy, even when it's like weird creatures that are trying to kill them that aren't the Bergens and stuff. And they actually stick to that aesthetic throughout the entire series and stuff. And they even have it follow along with like the scrapbooking sections, because the main character Poppy scrapbooks throughout the movie, so the characters will change like art styles. I think in the third movie there's like 2D drawings at some point, so it's like it's interesting where it's like the soft fuzzy Yoshi's Woolly World like handcrafted vibe, but then it's also the thing of them being like the trolls are tiny in an environment that also is kind of small. Like it's like if you zoomed into like a flower patch or something, kind of a thing, where it makes me think of Pikmin. So it's kind of like in the whole thing where trolls are like tiny Smurf like creatures that can get eaten at any moment. It's like Pikmin if it was mixed with the aesthetic of Yoshi's Woolly World, is the way I can describe the trolls environments and stuff. Even in the second movie, when it changes to like the rock and roll stuff, it's still handmade, but just like denim and leather and like other materials to like match the vibes of everything. It's really cool. It's like, and these movies are like actually really pretty too anyway, especially with the first movie has these like sort of nature shots that are kind of cool, especially because this is the one, like the first half of the movie is like Poppy's big journey and stuff. So yeah, the movies just all look great and everything, but I especially love that aesthetic. I really liked the montage of Poppy. She sings this song about like never giving up or whatever, where she has to run through before like Branch finally joins her. Like every danger and element on Earth, including almost being digested twice and poisoned. And you know what? By herself, Poppy does like a pretty good job until she gets captured by spiders, and that's when Branch like officially joins her and stuff. And I like that it's this like standard kids adventure movie, or at least it's actually only the first half of the movie. I was kind of surprised by that. But like everyone is sarcastic. Like one of the first characters they meet that's like not a troll, because there are like non-troll creatures besides like the trolls and the Bergens and stuff, is this chill cloud. I think his name's something like Mr. Cloud or whatever, that like messes with Branch. I thought he was gonna have like a bigger role. I thought he was gonna become their travel companion, but he's like a very, very minor character in like the other ones too. Like his big scene in this is like he's like, oh, I can give you directions, but only if you give me a high five. And he knows like Poppy wants to give him the high five, but he knows Branch won't do it, and it's like trying to get him to like chill for a second, and Branch gets pissed and like chases him around, and then that ends up leading them to like the exit or whatever, because it's one of those things where it's like one of these paths is correct and the other one leads to like certain doom or whatever. Which one is it going to be? But that part was pretty funny. I feel bad for the Bergens, honestly. I'm glad that by the end of the movie they all end up becoming happy, and then you get to see them again in like the third movie, mostly at like the start, where they're all happy and they get along with the trolls and stuff. So it's nice that it like kind of eventually works out. But I do like that. I feel like this is the movie out of all the ones in the series where the main characters get to interact regularly with the villains most, because it like doesn't really happen in the second movie. In the second movie, it takes them forever to actually meet the villain, but they see her path of destruction everywhere. And with the third movie, it's like the villains might as well be in like a different movie or something, because they're not really like present either. But here it's like they get to interact with the Bergens and stuff. But anyway, I feel bad for them because they think they can only be happy by like eating a troll. And one of the main Bergen characters, there's two of them. One of them's name's Bridget, and she's a crush on this like prince character who eventually becomes their king. And I refer to him as like a prince in my notes because he originally has a dad who's a king, but then the dad dies during the 20-year, because there's a 20-year time skip in this movie. I guess I'll refer to him as the king. I don't know, he like becomes king, but there's this king character who I feel kind of the most bad for, who's a Bergen, whose dad convinced him when he was a child of like, oh yeah, you didn't get to eat a troll because all the trolls ran away, so you'll never be happy for your entire life unless you eat a troll. But he's never had a troll at all, so it's like treated as like, oh, you've never been happy in your entire life and you never will be. Like, damn, you know. And the thing is, you see that he's happy even before, like, has the ability to feel joy even before the trolls, like, disappear, and before he even, like, he never actually gets to eat one in the entire series. So it's really just manipulation, because he's, like, happy when it's, like, the day that they have to eat the trolls anyway, of, like, I'm gonna eat my first troll, and he's, like, excited, and it's, like, that's natural happiness, dude. But like the Bergen characters like can't realize that. I thought it would have been funny, like they do have this message for the movie of like, you can't eat stuff that will just make you happy, like the ability to get like instant happiness easily. It's this message of like, happiness is supposed to come from you and others and whatever, but before they kind of really hit you over the head with that message, I read in my notes how it would be funny. I thought it would be funny if the trolls actually tasted terrible instead. And it could be a metaphor of like substances can't make you like truly happy or whatever. which, I mean, that is eventually the kind of the message the movie leans in more towards later. But no, the trolls, like, canonically are supposed to taste good or whatever. So it's not just like they're eating them because it makes them happy, but it's also that the trolls are supposed to taste good. It's weird with Bridget. Oh yeah, I want to talk about Bridget. Bridget is a Bergen character that has like a crush on the king. I like her. She's adorably awkward, and she ends up becoming friends with the trolls and helping them even before the rest of the Bergens end up like befriending the trolls at the end of the movie. And Bridget even like sacrifices herself at one point for them and becomes like besties with Poppy. It's really cute. I didn't realize till after I finished the movie she's voiced by Zooey Deschanel, and I feel like that kind of makes more sense now. But Bridget's kind of, the Bergen designs are kind of interesting, where it's like there's a 20-year time skip, so Bridget and the king character should be at least 20 by like the present day when the movie takes place, but they look like children. They like barely get bigger from that like time skip where they're supposed to be adults. They even get like married in the third movie, but they're like smaller than all the other Bergens and still dressed kind of childish. So that was like kind of weird. Oh yeah, I'm skipping through like a lot of stuff in the movie, by the way. I got to the infamous "singing killed my grandma" line, and it's kind of funny in the movie where Poppy is like, throughout the movie she's trying to get Branch to sing with everybody, and he's like, no, I don't sing. And he does like soften after a while, where he eventually like starts smiling and even dancing with the others, and he eventually does sing. It's like halfway through the movie when he like kind of starts to soften up a bit, and he's like becoming friends with Poppy. But she's like pressuring him, and it's like a big moment. She's like, why won't you sing? And he's like, but singing killed my grandma. But he says it so casually, but does kind of yell at her, that I totally get why it's a meme, because it just sounds like completely ridiculous. And I finally got to learn today what the actual context of like what the hell does that even mean, and the scene's kind of funny because he's singing in the flashback and like as it's being told or whatever. It's basically like he was singing and distracted, and he was gonna get eaten by a Bergen, and his grandma pushed him out of the way, and the grandma died. And I thought it was going to be revealed at the end that the grandma was actually fine or whatever, but no, like the grandma is like dead throughout the entire series and stuff, so no wonder Branch feels bad about it. But yeah, the way they like played off that scene was just kind of weird. It was a bit funny. And they describe Branch's voice at one point of like sounding like an angel or something, or he says like, oh, that's what my grandma used to say. And normally I would find that kind of a little cringe and whatever of describing someone's voice, but like Justin Timberlake really does have a good voice, and it is super satisfying when he does finally get to sing in this movie. But anyway, the first half of this movie, it's interesting, where it's Branch and Poppy's like little adventure, whatever, to go find their friends in the Bergen town. And then the second half of the movie is the trolls trying to set up Bridget and the king together so they can like rescue their friend or whatever, which ends up going nicely, because I got halfway through and I'm like, wow, they got to the Bergen town really fast. How much of the rest of the movie's left? And I saw it was like the second half of the movie, and I'm like, oh. But I didn't mind. I thought that was fun. The Bergens are cool characters. Like the villain of this movie, I had completely forgot about her already, is this chef lady that wants to take over the land or whatever and eat all the trolls or something. Anyway, when they set up Bridget with the king character, they have her go through this as this persona that's called Lady Glitter Sparkles, and I completely remembered about something that I hadn't seen the troll movies, but I'd seen like videos about the troll movies. And back with Pokemon Sword and Shield, because I had Shield, I had a Galarian Ponyta, and I named it Lady Sparkles, and I couldn't remember why I named it that, and I realized it was because of this movie, that I probably watched some video that was like making fun of the movie, and I guess the name stuck to me or whatever. But that's kind of funny. It finally clicked for me of where that was from or whatever. Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting one of the trolls to actually betray the others, because like Poppy has a group of friends. Oh yeah, I want to talk about Poppy's group of friends because they're kind of interesting. Let's see. There's a troll that's like obsessed with meditation. He's the one that betrays the group to avoid getting eaten, and then he tells Poppy when he's betraying her of like, I'm doing this for you or whatever. He gets kicked out of like the troll town by the end, though. He isn't really like a major character or anything. I think his name's like Creek or something, and then her other friends are chill though. One of them is named like Diamond or something, and is this auto-tuned troll that is covered in like sparkles, and he eventually has a baby, and the baby's voiced by Kenan Thompson for some reason. It is this tiny baby in the second and third movie that's called Tiny Diamond. One of her other friends, there's two of them, I think one of them's named Chanel, and it's kind of interesting. They're these trolls that, I don't know if they're supposed to be like the in-universe version of like conjoined twins or something. Like their bodies aren't, but their hair is like permanently connected, so I don't know. I don't mean like braided together, but like, you know how the trolls, the top of their heads are like this little point and whatever, and with these two characters their hair is connected. It doesn't have that point, so it's kind of like a rainbow basically. And they're these two like fashion forward trolls, and then there's this friend that isn't a troll and is like this horse creature that you find out an entire backstory for in the second movie that I'll save for my Trolls 2 review. Anyway, they have a scene in this movie. It's the scene where Branch finally gets to sing, which is kind of nice, where the trolls, they turn gray when they feel hopeless and sad. And then that's when Branch finally sings, and he cheers at Poppy. And then they both get to sing together, and all the trolls get their color back. And there's even a nice little harmonica section at the end. And it's like a nice moment in this movie. I don't remember what the song is about, and then they do it again in the second one, and like visually it's a lot better, but like I feel like it didn't really hit as hard. I don't know, I thought it was weird that they like decided to pull the same thing for the emotional climax in the second movie. And then Poppy's immediately just telling Branch like, it really took you like this long to finally become happy, because he stops being gray. He eventually becomes like back to being blue. But it's weird because like he had like blue or purple hair as like a baby, and he like never gets that back or whatever. I was wondering about that, if the trolls turning gray was supposed to maybe also represent like depression or something. Because Branch says this thing about happiness and how like being around Poppy made him happy, and it was like it finally took him, he's like finally happy now. So I was wondering if it was like a metaphor. I mean, he doesn't really seem like depressed during the events of the movie. It's more of like he's kind of a bit grumpy and sad. He doesn't seem like emotionally numb or like an extreme sadness. I don't know. Anyway, the part where Bridget sacrifices herself was actually kind of sad. But then she ends up with the Prince character at the end, which is nice. I'm glad you get to hear Bridget sing a couple of times too. I feel like she is one of the best voice. It's kind of funny because like I know she's voiced by Zooey Deschanel. I don't know if that's also the person who has her singing voice, or you know how sometimes people are dubbed over, because like Bridget, when she sings, has one of the best voices out of like everyone in my opinion. But like everyone can, or most of the actors can like sing, so but yeah, that's about it. And then Poppy at the end gets to be made queen. Oh yeah, because she's like a princess. I forgot about that. That's why she has like a little green crown in the other movies instead of just like the headband or whatever. And then Branch finally is like able to be himself or whatever, and they're like written in the credits as being like best friends or whatever. So that's Trolls 1. It's a pretty fun movie. kind of silly. I like the Bergen characters. I was a bit sad they don't really return in the second movie, but I do kind of like the second movie is just more about like the trolls and their lore, and the villain is also a troll. But let's talk about Trolls World Tour, aka Trolls 2. I just literally wrote these as Trolls 1, 2, and 3 in my notes, by the way. So I think the second Trolls movie is more fun, where it's like Branch and Poppy on another adventure, but this time it's about music. Because music, like the first movie, is weird, is about like happiness, and it just kind of happens to be a musical. But then the other two movies are like way more focused on music, where the second movie is focused on like different genres of music and music in different cultures, but also just about different cultures in general. And then the third movie is about the music industry, specifically for pop stars. It's kind of, and boy bands. It's kind of interesting. But the second movie is really cool, I think, just because of the different, like the trolls that represent different music genres have different, like very different designs from each other, which I think is really fun. I'm just a little bummed that some of them get more screen time than others, and you'll see what I mean with that later. So the movie starts off great, where it's actually just a rave with these underwater trolls. Hold on, I gotta sneeze real quick. Okay, let me just turn off my fan 1 second. Okay. There we go. Alright. So yeah, there's techno trolls, as they're called, and they have a rave at the beginning of the movie, and their bodies literally like glow in the dark and stuff. It's really cool. They're kind of almost like mermaids. I don't know why, if they're like techno, that they live at the bottom of the ocean, but whatever. You only really get to see them at the beginning, and then that's kind of it, because then their world is destroyed. Because the whole thing is there are the rock and roll trolls, and their leader is named Barb. She's on the cover of the DVD, and I used the cover of the DVD for the photo because it was the only picture where I can find like all of the movies and their like titles and stuff together, because I was going to talk about all three. Barb's a cool character. She's like pretty funny. I think her dad is played by Ozzy Osbourne, which I thought was cool. But her whole thing, and it's kind of more her goal than even just like the other rock and roll trolls, is she doesn't believe that other genres of music are like quote unquote real music or whatever. And the trolls, each land of trolls, like with their music and stuff, has like a magic string, and she wants to collect all the strings and have all the music in the world be replaced with like only rock music and stuff. So that's pretty much the plot, where like everyone's on a race to get these like magic strings or whatever that turn out to not really even matter at the end, but whatever. But Barb's cool. I thought she's like an interesting contrast to Poppy. Poppy is kind of a bit annoying in this movie, but this is like the movie where she goes through the most character growth, and then her character growth is immediately reset with the third movie. Cool. Because both Barb and Poppy, they don't understand why like the other kind of trolls like different music, where Barb is kind of like immediately forcing her way and like kind of making fun of the other trolls' music, and then Poppy doesn't really know about the other kinds of trolls, and she is trying to kind of force pop on them a little bit, but views it in a way of like, oh, their music isn't happy like my music, so I gotta make them happy with my music. And like the trolls are all kind of disgusted with each other's types of music or whatever. And like Barb wants all the trolls to live together, but like under like a nation of rock or whatever she calls it. And hold on. Okay, I thought I was being called, but then I heard a door closed or something. Sometimes I get like too into these recordings and I don't hear people like calling me or whatever. Anyway, and then Poppy wants all the trolls to live together. She doesn't specifically want it as like they all need to be fans of pop music or whatever, but it's more of she wants everybody to be together, and it's more of her learning that like, hey, other cultures exist and it's fine for them to all have their own unique thing and whatever. So that's like her lesson of the movie. But then she also has to learn how to like listen to other people, and she goes through like some genuine growth, and then she has like the same problems again in the third movie where she's not really listening to people and forcing her opinions on everyone, because she's like, she only hears what she wants to hear, and then she ends up getting along with the villain at the end, like her and Barb become friends and stuff, and then we never see any of these like other music genre trolls like ever again by like the third movie, so it's a bit of a bummer. It's kind of like if the second one just kind of didn't happen, even though all the trolls end up living together by the end of this one, so I don't know. But yeah, the different groups are fun. Like there's country trolls, they get probably the most screen time for some reason, and they're centaurs, which I feel like fits pretty well, honestly. Branch gets to sing from like the start of this movie, which is nice, where he still lives underground because he's probably, you know, like not a people person, but like he hangs out with the other trolls now. You know, I think that was something with the third movie. I don't remember many of like it's kind of weird where like Poppy's friends kind of disappear throughout the series, where like the first movie they're like a major part of it, where they're like working together to go rescue their other trolls, and then they're there for like a bit in like the second movie and stuff, and then by the third movie they're accompanied by a baby, and that's kind of about it. I don't know where the rest of Poppy's friends go. They have this thing at the beginning where Branch is trying to want to like confess his romantic feelings to Poppy and is like nervous about it, and I was really worried that was going to be a plot line throughout the entire movie, but it's kind of only really at the beginning and then gets brought up again when they have their like big argument right at like the third act or whatever. And I'm actually kind of glad that they did it like that, because that's one of the things I didn't like about Frozen 2, where Kristoff spends the whole movie trying to like wanting to marry Anna, and that's kind of all his character gets reduced to, and it's kind of a bit annoying because he's like a cool character in the first movie, and I thought like, please don't do something like that again. But no, Branch gets to just kind of hang out with Poppy normally and stuff, and they eventually get into like a big argument, and he like calls her out on some stuff, which is nice, and then they end up, you know, together again by the end. Let's see. Pregnancy is a thing that's brought up in the Trolls universe that I'm still kind of wondering about, where male pregnancy is a thing, because one of Poppy's friends ends up giving birth at the beginning of the movie, and the trolls hatch out of eggs that come out of the other troll's hair or something. I'm wondering if they reproduce asexually or whatever, because like some of the trolls don't have partners, but then they give birth. I don't know. I probably shouldn't be questioning how trolls are born. Oh yeah, and the reason I find it funny that there's so much pop music in the first movie, because I feel like a lot of kids' movies are like that, where it's mostly like pop music to get inside of your head or whatever, and there's like constant singing in the first movie. I feel like it's mostly in the first two movies, actually, even though they're all kind of related about music. But the reason it's only like pop music in the first movie, and then it goes back to pop music in the third, which makes me really sad, is that the canonical reason is that the trolls that we know and love from the first movie are referred to as the pop trolls, and that's why there's so many different genres in like the second movie. It's funny because like with the first movie and the trolls and the pop music, you just kind of assume all the trolls are like that, you know. I feel like it makes sense. They're like little Smurf-like dudes. I was surprised there was older genres that were included, because there's like 6 and then there's like minor ones, but their minor ones are like bounty hunter characters. It's kind of weird. Like in terms of older genres, they have classical, they have funk. I loved the funk section of the movie. It's kind of short, but it's nice. This is what I meant with the screen time thing, because like country takes the most time, and then funk. We actually don't get too much pop, which is nice, because we had it throughout the entire first movie. Classical gets like no screen time when the characters, it's like the first sort of world, quote unquote, the characters go to, but it's already destroyed. We get to see the classical world in like a 1-minute flashback, and we never really get to hear any of the music for it, or even at like the end, and I was kind of bummed, because it's just character Barb keeps making all of these comments about like why she doesn't like the other music genres, and I feel like some of it's sort of valid, or like the opinions most people would have of like classical music being boring or whatever, but like classical music actually can be kind of cool. That was something I had to discover myself a couple years ago, where I just assumed it was kind of boring too, and then I've ended up finding the winter song from that like Four Seasons thing, and I was like, oh, this actually goes pretty hard, and some other music as well. But yeah, I was surprised classical and funk were also included in here, because the first movie, it's interesting, is about like happiness and stuff, and then the second movie is about like tolerating people that are like different from you, as the movie I think puts it. And I like that the trolls get even weirder designs in this one, where it's like, even amongst the pop trolls, there's like a troll that has like really, really long legs. There's one of them that has 4 legs, like a horse that already existed and stuff. I liked the penny whistle character that we get to see. I thought it was going to be more of a prominent character. I like that the rock and roll trolls have this thing about like friendship, where Poppy, you know, and it's kind of the attitude of like all the trolls, really, they just want to become friends with everyone immediately, and the rock and roll trolls are like, no, friendship takes time and mutual respect. You can't just automatically become friends with someone. I thought that was a surprisingly smart thing out of this movie, and they do criticize pop music as well, which I feel like they're right about, where they have this backstory thing that gets revealed in like the funk world, where it turns out the pop trolls were originally the ones that like messed everything up, and them remixing things and whatever, and taking elements from the other music genres, which I feel is like completely true. And there's like the subgenres, as I'll call it, where there's these bounty hunter characters, which are reggae, yodeling, K-pop, and smooth jazz, which I feel like are kind of weird ones to pick, but I feel like I feel like most of those aren't really popular though, except for K-pop. It's interesting. I mean, some of those I listen to, I don't know, and they're all kind of like stereotypes of like the places they're from too, because like, or maybe, I don't know, I think at least just for like the yodeling trolls, no, the yodeling and I guess kind of the reggae ones too, but that's interesting because they refer to K-pop as K-pop, but the K in K-pop is like for Korean pop, so there's got to be like trolls Korea, and then the yodeling trolls speak with like a German accent, so that means like Germany also has to exist, but the trolls exist in like some kind of magical world that's like handcrafted, so I don't really get it. Oh yeah, they end up making the country troll. I should probably talk about the country trolls. Branch gets into the country music for a bit. They have this whole thing where they make friends with this one country troll. I can't remember the name of, but I think his name started with H. And they have this thing where it's like the two characters from the previous movie are like maybe gonna become lovers, and then there's like a third character that's introduced, and then one of the other characters is like really jealous of, even though there's not really like a romantic thing going on. They do that. I don't know what that's referred to, but it's always just kind of annoying where Branch is like jealous of the country music troll or whatever, even though Poppy's not like romantically interested in that specific character. I'm not really a fan of country music, but the country music in this movie is pretty cool. Like there's a song, the first song that's played, I think it's sung by like Kelly Clarkson, if I remember correctly. Not completely sure on that. Where she sings some song, I think it's called like Born to Die. It's actually really pretty and kind of slow. A lot of the country music in here is like really chill. I actually liked that. I actually do want to listen to the soundtrack, at least for like the first 2 movies, but especially the second one, because there was some like pretty cool songs in there. Like the K-pop trolls get a song that I also really liked. I also like their designs too, where they're like completely silver but not like glittery or anything. This movie also has like a lot of weird stuff too. There's a character that's named Mr. Dinkles who is a worm and not a troll, and also doesn't have any speaking lines. And at one point he has like a near-death experience and then gets sad that he doesn't get to go to heaven and die. And then in-universe, smooth jazz has a paralyzing effect that causes you to hallucinate so hard that real human beings actually show up for a little bit. It feels like this movie is like 50 times weirder than the previous one, but the smooth jazz section was kind of funny. I also personally really like smooth jazz anyway. I like that the troll that represents smooth jazz has like flowing hair and can fly and just flies around with like a saxophone or whatever. Kind of reminded me of like Kenny G. But the smooth jazz section was kind of funny. It reminded me of a part from the third movie where the characters, everything ends up being in like a 2D art style, or 2D like hand drawn and stuff. And then Poppy ends up getting called out on some things, which is nice. Like I said, she ends up going through some character development here about how she makes this promise at the beginning of the movie to like one of her friends about like, don't worry, I'm your queen now, I'm gonna keep everybody safe. And then she doesn't keep everyone safe and they get mad at her and one of them leaves, and then eventually she ends up getting into an argument with Branch where the reason she's like trying so hard was that she's trying to like prove she's a good leader and that she can't force like pop music on everyone and whatever. She doesn't listen to other people, and I thought that was nice. And then what else? I really like some of the character designs that aren't even like characters, like the design of the sun, which I think you only get to see in the second movie. Totally feels like it would be in the show Chowder. The funk world was really cool. We get the backstory for the horse-looking character that wears this little green hat, that he's actually from the funk world. And he has this line of dialogue about like, yeah, I can be both, because he's like from the funk world, but like raised in the pop world. And he's like, yeah, I can like funk and pop. And I thought that was going to be kind of more of the message of the movie, of like, yeah, you can like multiple genres and not just one. Because hip-hop's also included in the funk world, but all the songs in there are cool, and it's like very colorful and stuff. Like there's this song the characters sing to Poppy about how the pop trolls are the ones that like originally messed everything up. I don't know what it's called, but I gotta Google it at some point because I really liked it. It was very catchy. And then Poppy gets explained about how, what was the line? Denying people's differences is like denying who they are or whatever, because she wants all the trolls to like live together peacefully and stuff. And I mean, they do end up living together, but then like embracing each other's genres and stuff by the end. I was not expecting the centaur character that Poppy befriends. I thought he was like a little sus. Not that he was going to betray them or anything, which would have sucked if we got two friend characters that betrayed Poppy in like 2 movies in a row. But I was like, why is he trying to help them so bad? But it turns out he's actually one of the like yodeling trolls, and then he eventually switches back to like his kind of southern drawl anyway later on. But the yodeling trolls don't really have much like screen time or anything. In terms of like the subgenre stuff, the like bounty hunter characters, it's really just like the K-pop trolls and the reggae trolls that kind of end up getting the more screen time. But yeah, the movie was fun. I liked it better than the first one a lot. I think mostly because of the soundtrack, where it's so many different genres and stuff. I thought that was a cool idea. Because I remember when I kept seeing all the posters for this, it only kept showing like Poppy and Barb, so I thought it was only going to be like the colorful like pop trolls and then the rock trolls and that was going to be it, and I thought it was going to be more generic, but I didn't know until I actually watched the movie that there's like a bunch of other genres that are included as well, and it's sort of like a journey through different kinds of music, and I thought that was really fun. And then I was bummed that like wasn't really a thing for like the third movie, not of like I needed them to explore more genres of music. I'd watch a whole other movie about that though, if it existed, but it doesn't really it gets referenced in like one line of dialogue, and that's kind of about it. If anything, the third movie kind of reminded me more of like the first movie, but not as good. But yeah, it was kind of a bummer. They're like, look at how many different genres of music are here, and then we barely get to see some of them. Oh yeah, there's a song in the credits, I think that Justin Timberlake sings, and it was super like funky and catchy. I gotta look that up too. But yeah, the Trolls 2 soundtrack is really good. Like, if you don't watch any of these movies from listening to these reviews, at least go listen to the soundtrack. I mean, both for the first movie and the second, but like especially the second. Okay, I'm gonna talk about Trolls 3 now. I have like barely any notes about this. I think Trolls 3 is like shorter than the other ones too, and I was kind of a little disappointed with it, especially because the second one was like so good, and the third one felt more like the kind of just generic sequel that doesn't really explore anything. I mean, it definitely has its own like commentary of like the pop music industry and about like boy bands and the price and quest for fame, which is kind of interesting to explore, because now it's like we've learned about other music genres and now we can focus on like critiquing the music industry. But like as an adventure with its characters, I'm kind of just about it. They do the whole thing of like they did with Despicable Me 3 or whatever, where they're like, look, the main character has a long lost sibling, and then that's what the plot kind of revolves around, and they do it for like both of the main characters, which I felt is kind of unnecessary. Like, Poppy's sister is on all the posters and stuff, but she's like a very minor character. She doesn't even appear for like a while into the movie, and the movie's actually about Branch and his brothers, and that's what like the plot revolves around, where one of them is kidnapped by the villains and they have to go on this adventure to find all of Branch's brothers and to go rescue the one that's been like kidnapped or whatever. And Poppy's sister's only in the movie for maybe a total of like 5 minutes and doesn't really contribute much to the plot anyway, but you know, like Poppy's like the poster girl of the series, I guess. Okay, so I felt bad for Branch as a character in this movie, where as you get to see him as a baby, where the reason he lived with his grandma, I mean his parents aren't mentioned in these at all, is he has these older brothers that are all in a boy band, and Branch is also in the boy band, even though he's a baby. But even when he's a baby, they ignore him when they're like constantly squabbling, and then the group splits up and they literally just abandon their baby brother and just have him go live with his grandma, and none of them get to see each other again for like 20 years. And then Branch's grandma dies when he's like a little kid anyway, so then he has like no one for his entire life. And then until he like meets Poppy, and then when he finally gets to see his siblings again, they just kind of treat him like a baby and they're back to like arguing and stuff. It's kind of a bummer. I liked the beginning of this movie though. They brought back the Bergens, actually like all of them, because it's supposed to be that the king and Bridget end up getting married, and it's nice to see the two of them again, and that the Bergens are like chill with the trolls now. I think in universe there's like a month between the second movie and the third movie, because it's kind of weird that I liked Poppy's friends, but the baby character that's voiced by Kenan Thompson was like not really an important character in the second movie, but then in the third movie he like takes the place of Poppy's entire friend group, or he goes on the adventure with them, And his whole thing is that even though he's like a month old, he doesn't view himself as a baby. He views himself, he like tries to pretend to be an adult, but he's still obviously like a baby troll. And it isn't even really like that funny or anything. And I missed Poppy's other friends. But yeah, that's their companion. And then eventually they end up having Branch's brothers join and stuff as they're trying to find them. And then Poppy and Branch have this like kind of weird romantic tension as well, even though they're like supposed to be dating by this point. Like they do finally get to kiss at the end of the movie, and I did actually like in the first two that they don't kiss or anything, and they're not really like dating. They end up becoming like besties, and then by the third one they finally get to be like a bit more romantic. And they have this weird thing too. I felt like it was kind of forced. I feel like the whole thing of Poppy even having a sister was kind of forced. I don't know, because they have this thing where at the beginning where at the wedding it's discovered that just realized I said coming into the mic with no context. I was being called down for pizza. I gotta go eat pizza. I didn't realize I still had the mic on. Let me pause really quick. Gotta go eat. Okay, I'm back. I gotta turn on my notes again. I went to eat dinner, and then when I was eating my pizza, which I felt a little awkward about because I was with my parents, I was kind of humming a song. Oh shit, hold on a second. Okay, I'm back. I know I ended that with saying oh shit, and then I had to pause. I got a text message from someone about some bad news. Not anything too serious, but I just kind of needed a moment for that. Kind of messed up my throat a little too, so if I'm coughing a bit. Okay, I'm gonna get back to this. I want to finish this. I gotta go watch Wicked for a fourth time before getting to see the part 2 tomorrow. Okay, so I think I was talking about Poppy's sister. At the beginning of the movie, you know, like at the wedding, the Bergen wedding scene, the the characters are like freaking out finding out that Branch has a brother, but then they keep saying this weird stuff that's like very like wink wink, nudge nudge, this is going to be a thing that happens later, foreshadowing stuff of like Poppy potentially having family, where she suddenly starts talking about wanting a sister. I mean, it does start popping up at the same time, like Branch finds out he has a brother, so I guess that makes sense where Poppy's just like, man, I wish I had a cool sibling. But the fact that she's saying like, wow, I wish I had a sister and we'd be best friends and whatever, and then the next shot is like of her dad, the king, who I'm surprised is like still alive at this point, and he's like looking a little nervous or whatever, and basically saying the audience, even though the characters don't find out till like halfway through the movie, of like, hey, Poppy does have a sister. But I mean, you're spoiled about that anyway, because the sister is on like all the posters. She's the blonde one, and she like looks almost exactly like Poppy, so but that was kind of weird that the movie did that. Like, I feel like it was enough, you know, if the sister got saved for later, someone they encountered, like it could have felt like a cool new thing introduced to the plot, because we already had enough with like, oh, Branch is reunited with his brothers and they gotta like get the band back together at the title of the movie to go rescue the other brother who's named like Floyd, who's like the only nice one to Branch. Most of his siblings don't really treat him very well. The villains of this movie are kind of weird. Everyone I'm assuming is based on like some kind of toy, or like their world is handcrafted. The trolls are obviously based on toys, and the movie even shows that a little bit. I don't really know what the Bergens were supposed to be. I just assumed they were like generic sort of monsters, but they look like they're kind of made out of felt. I feel like the villains gotta be based on like a specific kind of toy or whatever, but they're kind of weird in that they're like humanoid, but they're bendy with like long limbs, and they kind of parody like influencers. It felt like it was like parodying Gen Z specifically. I do like that they're sort of in like almost a rubber hose kind of style of having like the pie eyes and the long limbs. I think that's kind of where the similarities end. So I was like half thinking about that, and I was half thinking about what's the horror game with the blue creature, Poppy's Playtime? There's like a pink spider character in that game. I've only ever played the first chapter, so I don't really know much about it. There's like a pink spider character who has like these really long bendy limbs that kind of look like licorice. The villains kind of reminded me of that, except they're humanoid, so their design's kind of weird, but like I kind of get what they're supposed to represent, of like these two siblings who are obsessed with like being famous, and they're singers, but then it turns out they can't sing, and the whole reason they're villains is because they're kidnapping the trolls and draining their life force and like stealing their talent, basically. They have this one line that I remember seeing in like a YouTube compilation thing or something, that was like the brother talking to the sister of like, where she's like, our parents were nobodies, we had nothing, and he's like, girl, we grew up in the suburbs, our parents were dentists, which it's funny. That's like the one line that like gets memed out of everything. It's like the new Singing Killed My Grandma, but like not as known or as funny. But that is kind of a funny thing for their backstory, where one of the siblings just views themselves as like, yeah, we were nothing until we became famous, and the other one's like, bro, we were middle class, we were fine. That was like one of the only legitimately funny parts of the movie. The rest of the villains' lines like aren't really nearly as funny. It just feels weird. They almost remind me of like Vector from Despicable Me, like barely, but in the sense of like, you know how he's like the villain of the first movie, and he has like his own segments before he gets to like actually meet Gru and kind of start the plot or whatever. That's kind of how the villains feel in this one too, where they kind of just get their own segments as the trolls are like journeying around trying to collect Branch's brothers. I mean, it was kind of that way a little bit with Barb and World Tour, but I feel like she had more of a presence in the story and was kind of doing more villainous things, as you'd see her like go across the different troll worlds, stealing the strings. I don't know, it's just, this whole movie feels kind of weird between like the villains and the whole plot line revolving around like lost siblings, and like the character dynamics and stuff are good. It just feels like kind of a whatever sequel. I always find it kind of cheap in a sense when the storyline of a kid's series of movies eventually becomes like, okay, we need to do one where they have like a long lost siblings. I feel like that's so like overdone and everything, especially because like Trolls World Tour was so good. It just feels like an unnecessary sequel, and then the replacing Poppy's friends with Tiny Diamond was kind of weird. I guess he's supposed to be like the popular character besides Poppy out of all the other ones, but I don't know. I personally liked the weird pink horse that was from the Funk World, but that's just me. He even had his own little thing going on in World Tour anyway. But it's kind of annoying how, like, at the start, for most of this movie, until she ends up meeting her sister, Poppy, it's kind of annoying where she's, like, really hyped for Branch to have a brother before she learns about, like, the other ones and stuff and seeing what they're actually like. Or, no, even when she does find out what they're like and how they treat Branch, she's still kind of on their side and stuff, the brothers. And Poppy is hyped about, like, you have a brother, you need to go on this quest because you're so lucky to have a brother or whatever. But, like, Branch is completely in the right to be pissed at his siblings. They still treat him as, like, a baby. They even make him, like, dress up in a diaper as if it was still, like, his costume from the band, even though he's, like, a full-grown adult or whatever. And they try to have this sort of message early on. Well, it's more of like the trolls, like the one nice brother in the group besides Branch, who's trying to convince one of the villains of like, hey, your sister shouldn't treat you like crap. It doesn't matter if you're like family. And I mean, Branch eventually does get to kind of stand up to his siblings a bit, finally, and whatever, but I feel like it takes a while for that message to kind of come into effect. Oh yeah, there's also a part of the movie where they go to this beach and there's these like naked puppet things that kind of look like Dr. Seuss characters. It's kind of interesting with like the character designs where like everyone's like, you know, a 3D model. They're not like literally made out of these materials, but I like how they still try to mimic those looks. Like the puppet things, the puppets or whatever aren't like actual puppets, but they still have the like felt bodies and the plastic eyes look with the yarn hair and the puppet mouths. I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and apparently the trolls can have like proper sex. Apparently, I thought it was just the egg thing, but turns out one of Branch's brothers has kids with one of the puppet creatures, and the characters ask like, yeah, how does that work? And they're like, we don't know. At least their offspring don't actually look super cursed. They all look like puppets and they're all puppet size, except their yarn hair is in the shape of like the troll haircut, as I'll call it, and that's kind of it. They didn't inherit like anything else from their dad. I always find that funny with like, you know, because the genetics will be completely wrong with like most where it's like a fictional interspecies like couple or whatever, and it'll be either like the girls look like the mom and the boys look like the dad, or it'll be that there's some kind of weird looking hybrid, or they'll just be like a different color, like Kermit and Miss Piggy's kids, I think in like A Christmas Carol or something, where it'll just be like a pink frog or whatever. It's always kind of weird but like interesting. There's a part where there's the song Do the Hustle. It's only for like probably like less than a minute, but it was still really cool, where there's like a button that's pushed because the characters travel around inside of a giant sentient like aardvark, I think, that kind of looks like a bus, and the characters, everything turns to being like 2D instead of 3D, and everything becomes super colorful, and the characters go through like 3 different art styles and stuff. I don't really get what was the point of that. I think it was just to be silly and fun, you know, but I thought that was cool. You know, I always I kind of miss movies being in 2D, like hand-drawn, I mean, so it's always kind of nice when it'll be like a 3D movie and then there's like a brief segment where the characters turn into 2D, or even just turning into another art style or whatever, or a different medium. I always find those really fun. Now that I think about it, this series is kind of reminding me more and more of Chowder than I originally thought. I know I briefly mentioned that with some of the character designs in like World Tour, like the sun and stuff, but I think that's subconsciously, I'm realizing part of the reason I liked this series so much was like the environments and the characters, and kind of just the vibe of the series kind of vaguely reminds me of Chowder, and Chowder's like a really nostalgic Cartoon Network show, one of the like really weird ones. There's a lot of weird Cartoon Network shows, but it kind of reminds me of Trolls, so that's nice. But yeah, the one of the things that is a little too much for me specifically in Band Together is that the movie pokes fun at like a little bit of too many modern like pop culture things, where like I don't even know what kind of world the trolls are supposed to live in, where they'll kind of like some of the commentary I get where it's supposed to be the point and it like makes sense for their whole musical world or whatever, about like different cultures and music genres and boy bands and Gen Z pop stars and stuff like that completely fits. But then they also talk about stuff like podcasts, and I'm trying to think what else. There's like specific lines. They have like certain lingo. Like there's a character that says something sus. That's always gonna just remind me of Among Us or other things. I think this movie came out in 2023, so I'm like trying to think back. You know, but it feels like it's trying to be a little too hip with the kids, you know, where it doesn't really come off as like funny. I feel like this movie was like kind of just trying a bit too hard, and then it came off as like more generic. Anyway, Poppy getting to reunite with her sister is nice. I already forgot what the sister's name is. She's the blonde one on the I'm literally just gonna refer to her as Poppy's sister, where her sister has like surprisingly even more energy than Poppy. But I think it's kind of a nice balance, because that was a little bit how Poppy was in like the first movie, and I've kind of noticed throughout the sequels that Poppy, I think probably because she becomes queen and, you know, befriends Branch and they kind of like balance each other, she kind of like becomes a bit less energetic and more mature as the movies go on, which is kind of, well, I can't really say completely mature, because her like character development from the second movie gets reset where she has some of the same problems again, but you know. But the sister is interesting, where she has this backstory where it's like, how does Poppy have this like long lost, I think older sister or whatever, where it's that she was separated from Poppy as a child and had to like fight the Bergens, and then ended up at some like abandoned golf course, and she still thinks that the Bergens are out there because she's never left the golf course. And it's one of those things where like a character has lived so long somewhere that they like are kind of too scared to leave even when the danger has passed. Like Poppy's trying to tell her like, yeah, I'm friends with the Bergens now, it's cool, we worked it out. But it reminded me of like, damn, you know, the trolls must have been afraid of the Bergens for a long time. I mean, there was like the 20 years before the first movie starts where they're just they still have the threat of the Bergens, but they're like chilling and whatever. But yeah, I kind of forgot about that until the sister brings it up of like, yeah, you know, the Bergens were like, we don't ever get to really see it in the first movie other than Branch's grandma, but it's like, oh yeah, the trolls were getting eaten and killed and everything. But yeah, the sister can't make herself leave, and then she eventually gets to meet Poppy's friend, Bridget or whatever, and then the sister, I think, joins them at the end. But she really, for being like on all the posters and the thing of like, oh, Poppy has like a sister, it kind of really doesn't go anywhere, because the focus is more on like Branch and his siblings and stuff, and I feel like that's kind of enough for the movie. What else? And then Branch ends up walking out in his family, which is kind of cool, where they all start arguing with each other, and Branch is like, hey, you guys still have issues, you still treat me as the baby of the family, I'm gonna walk out on you guys this time. That was a nice moment. And then Poppy is like determined to follow him anywhere, and it's nice we get the two of them together for a while. I mean, they're together in like every movie, you know, which is cool. But we haven't had it where it's just the two of them on a bit of an adventure since like the first movie. And then they have a fight with the villains later on where everybody ends up together, and that was kind of cool, where Branch and his brothers end up singing again, because the whole thing is like the leader of their group is a perfectionist or whatever, and they're trying to hit the, what is it, the family harmony note thing, whatever. I don't remember if they even do. I don't think they do, but they basically end up singing and having to fight the villains because their band members are like kept in these crystal things. And then it's kind of funny where once they free everybody, the villains just kind of give themselves up and then get arrested. I wasn't expecting that. Where one of the siblings is like, yeah, we kidnapped these trolls, we don't actually have any talent, we were draining their life force, and then they end up getting sued by one of the trolls, and they're like, yeah, you tried, you know, troll kidnapping, troll attempted murder, you guys are going to jail, and they get arrested. Not arrested by the trolls, mind you, but by the characters of whatever town they're from. We don't really learn about like where the villains are from, or what are they, or the rest of the people that live there in this society, other than the part about like, yeah, our parents were dentists, we grew up in the suburbs. Sorry, it's kind of a dumb thing, but it's still kind of funny. But yeah, I wasn't expecting them to get arrested, and then that made me think when I was watching the movie, and I'm like, why didn't the Bergens get arrested either? I mean, I know in that case it was an entire group of people, because they all ended up friends with the trolls and whatever, and they were doing it because like they weren't happy. But like those guys actually did kill trolls and eat them and got away with it for like many years. So like, why aren't they in jail? Let's see. And then Poppy and Branch get to kiss at the end. And I liked in the first two movies that they were just friends and they actually didn't go a romantic route. But I feel like their friendship was nice throughout the three movies, where then they did kiss at the end of this one, and I was like actually cool with it. I thought that was nice, because I feel like sometimes with kids movies it like rushes the romance stuff like a bit too fast, where they're already dating at like the end of the first movie, or they get married suddenly or whatever, and it's like you've only known each other for a couple days. And then I guess there's like trolls based on NSYNC, and I remember it, of course, with like Justin Timberlake being in a boy band, but I couldn't remember which one it was. Because then it's kind of funny the way they do it though, where like Branch has his brothers throughout the entire movie, and some of the stuff he's saying and the arguments they get into, I was already thinking about like boy bands from like the 90s and stuff. And then when everyone's together at the end, it turns out Branch invited these other people at like the beach place, and he's like, you didn't think I was just part of one band, did you? And then they all get to sing at the end, and that was kind of cool. But yeah, that's pretty much my notes. So final thoughts for this series overall. I think they're fun movies. They got some good songs. I'm gonna have to actually listen to the soundtrack again. I'm glad that like they have people that can actually sing, and I always get worried with kids movies when it's like it's just a bunch of like covers and stuff, because sometimes it can be kind of like bad or just like too many songs. I mean, there's like a lot of songs in Trolls, but I mean it fits, and it fits the environments they're in. I mean, Trolls World Tour is still my favorite in terms of like the music, but also just the variety of the music genres. I just think that was like a really fun thing to explore. I didn't think that one was going to be my favorite, but I thought, before watching any of these, that it was just going to be the first one that was my favorite. The first one was really fun too, being more of like an adventure to set everything up. I think with that movie, it had my favorite fill-ins, because I thought the Bergens were pretty cool, but like World Tour was kind of my favorite overall, and then Trolls Band Together is kind of just there. I don't know. It's kind of weird because like between the first two movies, I think the movies, it goes from like 2016, 2020, and then 2023. So I feel like if there was anywhere it was going to be a longer gap, I feel like it probably would have been like World Tour and Band Together would have made sense, because Band Together just feels kind of like okay, we're making a sequel just to make a sequel or whatever. But the fact that it was made so soon after World Tour feels kind of weird. I think there's other Troll things too, like mini movies or shorts or whatever. I'm not going to cover those. I'm assuming there's going to be no more of these, because I mean, Band Together already felt like an unnecessary sequel, so I don't think there needs to be a fourth one. Like I said, I feel like they could have stopped after the first two. I mean, the second one was nice, like, to kind of branch off from the first one of, like, exploring more of the troll world. I thought that was fun. But with the first, even with just the first Trolls, I feel like it could have ended there, where they, like, been, like, a one-off thing, where they, like, make friends with the Bergens and, avoid getting eaten and stuff. But it's, I guess, kind of cool. It ended up as a trilogy. I don't remember if that's like a common thing for DreamWorks movies now. I don't really keep up with them. Like, I remember from this time period it was like Trolls, and then like in terms of the ones I'd see like a lot of ads for, and the Boss Baby, and the Boss Baby has like 2 movies, but I'm not gonna go on to the Boss Baby. I don't really care about what's his face as a baby. I just find the premise kind of annoying, and I've never even seen it. I mean, I know I could say that about Trolls, and then I actually really liked Trolls, but I feel like that's a different thing. But Boss Baby isn't a musical, so I'm not interested. I don't know if I'll check out any other DreamWorks movies. Like, I've already seen like the Puss in Boots ones, and a lot of the older ones like Shark Tale or Megamind, and you know, there's like Shrek. It's gonna be like a Shrek 5 at some point. That's pretty crazy. But I don't know, because I mean, like, Peacock has, I think, like all the DreamWorks movies, and like I mentioned at the time I'm recording this anyway, I'm probably gonna stop using it soon, so we'll see if I watch more stuff from there. I don't know. Alright, but yeah, that's my thoughts on the Troll movies. I'm not gonna watch anymore, but they were pretty fun. Glad I checked them out. It was kind of nice to watch them all in one day. I didn't plan that. I didn't even plan to originally watch Trolls. I just ended up with like a lot of time today, and I'm like, why not? I'll check them all out. I was having enough fun. Alright, see ya.